Hi everyone, as always, I'm Vlad Sparastoria and I'm here to talk about shooting.
Today we are trying out the Chiappa CBR-9, where CBR stands for Chiappa Black Rhino. They named this weapon the Black Rhino.
What is it? It's simply a PDW, which stands for Personal Defense Weapon. It's a nice way to basically say semi-automatic submachine gun, since it doesn't have full auto capability. It was introduced about 10 years ago by the Italian company Chiappa. There's not much history to tell, except for the fact that Chiappa.
They are particularly proud of the fact that this weapon has 3 patents. One concerning the stock of the weapon, which, when collapsed, fits completely into the profile of the weapon. We'll see it a bit better when we look at it in detail.
And when disassembling it, there's a patent concerning the bolt, which, although it's blowback operated, has a rather unusual delayed system. We'll take a look at this as well.
Perhaps the strangest thing is its magazine, which is double stack with single feed. But as you can see, it's asymmetrical. All of this, the idea behind this magazine, is supposed to make it more durable. I wonder why, in 120 years of magazines, no one has ever had this idea before. Idea? It should also help to keep the bore axis lower. In fact, as you can see, it has a relatively low bore axis, especially regarding the grip, which, in theory, should help with the controllability of the weapon. But let's do something right away here at the Giffoni shooting range. Let's insert the magazine I just showed you, grab the charging handle, fire a few shots, and then we'll take a closer look at it.
Let's move it over to the camera and see what it's like up close.
So let's take a closer look at the Chiappa CBR-9. As we said, CBR stands for Chiappa Black Rhino, Black Rhinoceros. That's the name, let's say, of the project they've given to this firearm.
Obviously, we are also aware of the name. Here, it's clearly written Chiappa Black Rhino, while on the right side, other information is repeated, like CBR, CBR-9 Chiappa Firearms, and IT for Italy.
And of course, the very American warning to read the manual before using a firearm.
My advice, read the manuals before using a firearm, as you might learn some very interesting things.
Let's take a look at the controls of the firearm. Here we have the magazine release, which as you can see pops out quite nicely. The magazine itself is quite unique, as you can see, because it's a double stack magazine with a single but asymmetric feed. The idea is that most of the bolt can pass alongside the magazine, reducing and lowering the bore axis. Additionally, Chiappa claims that this design makes it more durable. How true that is, honestly, would need to be tested. But let's set the magazine aside. The other contrasts we find here are this lever, which is ambidextrous on both sides, and it's simply the hold-open lever.
By the way, something I'll notice during the live fire test is that when the gun goes into hold open with its charging handle, the charging handle doesn't do anything. It doesn't release the hold open. That's something that usually happens with firearms. I find it a peculiar choice, but hey, it's fine. Let's not complain too much.
The other obvious control, beside the trigger, is obviously the safety, which only works when the gun is cocked. Here we can put it on safety. In theory, going further, as you can see, the safety would almost be set to a third position, which is obviously reserved only for civilized countries that allow automatic weapons, like Poland, for the fun mode. We can also, as we said, operate the charging handle, which is reversible to the other side, and we can also extend the other grips of the weapon, namely this one in front. We have a front grip. I like them. I like these types of grips. I mean, whether you like it or not, you can still shoot the weapon while keeping it folded, but by pressing this button underneath, you can also pull out the stock of the weapon. The stock of the weapon extends to 2 different positions, the shorter one, as you can see, and the slightly longer one, which we used during the live fire test, also because I'm not exactly the smallest person on the planet. The Picatinny rail allows you to mount sights, as you can see, red dots or holographic sights.
We also have backup sights on the rails, and not only that. Actually, one thing we can see if we remove the red dot right now is that we also have a kind of rear sight and a fiber optic front sight on the rail. If, for example, these flip-up sights weren't there, it's not ideal, but at close range, it's really enough to be able to aim the weapon. Now, as we said, the key patented feature is the magazine, which, okay, helps keep the bore axis low, which is actually very low compared to the grip. There's no doubt about that. The collapsible stock has another patented feature, because, as we can also see clearly from this other side, as you can see, the stock basically doesn't leave any protruding parts when it's collapsed. For example, if someone wanted to use it in a type of mission like VIP escort, they would have to carry a PDW or a submachine gun under a jacket. It definitely helps in terms of compactness and the convenience of carrying these things. Honestly, the way it's used in Italy as a civilian PCC carbine doesn't have much use. But we still acknowledge this fact. But let's take a look perhaps at the most interesting parts of the firearm from this point of view, because we're going to disassemble it. First of all, we need to press this button here to remove the compensator. We unscrew it. We unscrew the compensator from the barrel like this, and the entire front part, which is a polymer piece, comes right off the front. Here we can already see the operating system better. The barrel with its charging handle. If we want, we can use tools. It's not something we'll do now, but this handle is reversible. We can put it on the other side if someone has the terrible misfortune of being born left-handed. Let's continue with the disassembly, because we have to. First of all, let's remove the stock. As you can see, it comes off completely. We can then press this button to remove this pin, which allows us to partially separate the upper from the lower. Using this same pin, we can remove the other one that holds the upper and the lower together. Here they are, the two pins. We set them aside, and in this way we can separate this plastic lower. As you can see, it's a piece of plastic that has an insert, if I'm not mistaken, in aluminum, where the bolt slams back. We also quite clearly have the magazine release button. By the way, this is a really lightweight piece. And now we come to the real heart of the weapon. Since the trigger remains part of this upper part, we can also see here the hammer and the recoil spring. At this point, we can remove the dual recoil spring. And in this way, using the charging handle, we can remove the bolt. Now, the more perceptive among you will notice something. The hammer is actually a very heavy piece with a very strong spring. Now, this very strong spring with this very heavy hammer, it's not just to ensure reliable ignition, which, let's be clear, is always important to have on firearms, but this is a straight blowback gun, meaning there's nothing mechanical that presents a disadvantage or a lock when opening. But the weight of the hammer itself and the strong resistance of the hammer spring contribute to the closure. So, in theory, the bolt, as far as the 9mm is concerned, is relatively light. This is true. I don't know how much it weighs right now, but I can tell you from personal experience with 9mm blowback guns that this bolt is relatively light. Relatively. It's not super light, but the heavy hammer that strikes back here and acts as a single block with the bolt, along with its heavy spring, helps to reinforce and delay this opening. It's not even mechanically a delayed blowback system, because there's no mechanical disadvantage, but it definitely helps. At least the bolt, when it reaches the end of its travel, doesn't have all that mass. How much does this actually help with controlling the weapon? I don't know. The fact is that Chiappa has patented it, and is particularly proud of this feature. But speaking of controllability, let's do one thing right away, because we're going to reassemble our weapon right now. Let's continue with the bolt. Let's put the dual recoil springs back on their guide and put it back together. By the way, it's quite heavy. As for the springs, that's how these guns are supposed to be. They would be even heavier if it weren't for this rather unique hammer. Now we can put the firearms lower in place and reinsert the pin that holds it. Now we can insert the other rear pin. And there's the pin. Let's put the stock back on. Here we go. Now we can reinsert this front section of the firearm's body. Looks like you need to experiment with it a bit. Here we go. It also comes off because the rear sight is screwed in here anyway. Sorry, I meant the front sight. This way we can screw the compensator back on, which is used to close everything up. We press this button to continue screwing it in. Here we are. And that's it. Once we mount the red dot, all that's left is to do a nice live fire test. Let's go! And here we are, back at the shooting range in Gifoni, where we are testing this Chiappa CBR-9. We've seen how it's made on the inside. Some solutions are definitely interesting, if not unique. That said, unique doesn't necessarily mean particularly practical. But let's insert the magazine, let's go through the loading sequence again, grab the charging handle, pull it back firmly and let it go. Let's fire these shots. Okay, the magazine is obviously empty. The bolt obviously stays open, as you can see. We can close it using the hold open. Let's pull the trigger, just to be safe. So, first impressions. The positive things. The low barrel and this setup where the barrel is almost at the same height as the grip definitely helps with recoil control. Not that 9mm have much recoil anyway. It's something we've often discussed, like when we recently looked at the Chris Vector or when I mentioned the good old MP5, which I really love, even on full auto. There's not much recoil to control, even with 9mm. But surely a proper weapon design helps, right? We can't deny this fact. I can't help but, when I hold this weapon in my hand, see a huge ergonomic problem that seems extremely obvious to me. You know how much I love a good stock. And there are so many weapons in this category, so compact, that have to make compromises with the stock. I mean, a collapsible stock, a folding stock, will always have some compromises in its design. Still, this one collapses very, very well. It's very compact and almost invisible when it's collapsed. However, when I go to aim, I have no way to rest my cheek. You can rest your cheek on weapons like the Uzi, the MP5 and the Chris Vector. In short, there are more weapons where you can properly position your cheek, because if I wanted to do it, I would have to do it down here. But this way, I can't see the sights. I have to keep my face almost unnaturally high. And I don't have this support point, which is essential. Anyone who shoots with a long gun knows how important it is to have a good cheek weld. Well, maybe for spraying, let's say with a personal defense weapon at close range, this isn't so essential. I mean, I can see the sights. But I can understand how, even simply, when used for practical shooting, in a quick transition from one target to another, you miss this support point. You really miss this support point a lot. Simply, if this stock is collapsible If it had been, instead of being placed in this low position, placed higher, so it would come out here and go down with this. With this element where we rest the shoulder, the problem would be solved. Because as annoying as it is, I could rest my cheek on this element. But that's not the case. It really bothers me a lot. As for the other controls of the weapon, they are completely ergonomic. We have a charging handle that disappears here with its spring very easily. By the way, it's reversible. Not quickly, but by disassembling the weapon, it is reversible. We have a safety that of course allows you to engage the safety. And in theory, in the more fun versions, the fun mode as I call it, is quite obviously a magazine release. The grip itself, on the other hand, is correct and ergonomic. Your hand sits very high relative to the bore axis, and this helps a bit with control. Let's shoot, let's fire a few more rounds. By the way, here's something interesting. Right now, the bolt is locked open, and if I use the charging handle, absolutely nothing happens. I have to use the hold open control. We could consider this a small flaw, because, under stress, someone might want to operate the handle again, and I would expect the bolt to close anyway, like it does with 99.9% of firearms. The firearm is definitely stable when shooting, there's no doubt about that. But this fact that I can't rest my face is killing me. Let's move the camera and try again. Okay, we have a little malfunction. I love it. Okay, we have a problem with the feeding. Let's see. Okay. There was a failure to eject, so it kind of failed to feed. You can put as many patents as you want in a firearm. When a mistake is made, in my opinion, like rookies in soccer, we shoot again and move on to the conclusions. Not being able to rest my face is something that slows down my sight acquisition. It's terribly unnatural. It's terribly unnatural. And I assure you that, as far as the shooting experience goes, for me, it completely ruins it. I mean, I prefer damn a PPS 43 that's made of sheet metal welded by Soviet illiterates. It has an extremely long bolt travel after you pull the trigger. But for heaven's sake, at least you can rest your cheek on the gun and aim properly. I don't know. This Chiappa CBR-9 has some positive aspects. It definitely has ideas that could be smart. But it seems, you know what? It seems like a weapon made by an engineer who has never fired a shot in his life. I mean, it has a series of solutions, these patented solutions that are smart from a purely mechanical point of view. Purely in terms of how a machine works. But not from the shooter's point of view. And this feeling is quite particular, because it's not entirely wrong. The weapon works, engineering-wise, as a design. The solutions are smart, functional, correct. But I have the impression that the person who designed it never fired a single shot. They never went to the shooting range and noticed, damn, I don't have anywhere to rest my cheek. Have you tried it? Let me know in the comments. First of all, I want to thank everyone for watching this video. First of all, I want to thank the owner of this weapon, who today, like many of you have done in the past and I hope will do in the future, offered to bring this weapon here to the shooting range for us to try. I thank you immensely. And if you want to contribute to my channel, to these reviews, message me if you have any interesting firearms. If you want to contribute actively, also consider buying the channel's t-shirts. They help a lot, also because doing all this definitely isn't free. If you don't want to or can't, At least consider leaving a like and a comment. They help a lot. YouTube lately, since June, has been really cracking down hard on firearm content.
Let's send them a message. Let's make them understand that we actually like this kind of stuff.
That's all from me from this CBR-9. And as usual, I'll see you next time.